It all started when I was 2 years old. My mom used to say that the first 2 years of my life was like the quiet before the storm. And as soon as I was able to walk and talk, it was like all hell broke loose in my household. I was what you called the spirited child, which basically meant that I didn't listen to anybody, had to do things my own way. The challenge was I grew up in a household that was extremely controlling. My father was that my way or the highway kind of guy. Always had to follow his rules, his regulations. Here was the box. You have to live in this box. Live in this box and we'll be happy with you. Well, that didn't really mesh well with my spirited ways. There was a joke in my family that my terrible twos came, stayed a little longer, stayed a little longer, stayed a little longer, and finally left when I was 13 years old. I didn't really find that one funny either. Just to give you an idea of what I mean when I say I was spirited, I've got two older siblings. They would be sitting on the couch watching TV, minding their own business. I would come along with a bright new shiny toy in my hand and start bashing them over the head just for fun. I'm pretty sure I'm the only kid I know that had a lock on the outside of my bedroom door to actually keep me in there from all the times that they would say, "Michael, go to your room." But the challenge with being labeled from an early age was that I felt different. I felt like I never fit in. I felt like I never belonged, and I felt like nobody understood me. And the challenge was it wasn't just in my family that I felt this way, it was at school as well. I was bullied, I was picked on, whether I was too sensitive or too chunky, there was always something that made me feel different, that made me feel isolated, that made me feel alone. Now, I grew up in a small little town, and unfortunately, the thing about once you get labeled and once you get judged is that it's very hard to create a new identity for yourself. So this bullying and this isolation lasted not only through grade school, but all the way into high school. And I got into grade 9, and I thought I was going to get a fresh start, but it was just more of the same. And I finally just wanted to just slide under the radar. You know, maybe if I just don't speak or don't act, people just won't notice me as much. And maybe I won't be picked on or isolated as much. And so I actually got into a point where finally, in grade 11, I was just so tired of trying that I just became completely depressed. Completely depressed, completely desolate. I spent the majority of my year hiding in my living room, on my couch, watching as many TV shows and movies as I could possibly get my hands on, hoping and praying that somehow my life would magically transform into the happy ending that I saw on TV. Unfortunately, I hadn't mastered those superpowers at that point, so I really just kept getting a lot more of the same. There was this depression, there was this lack of self-esteem and self-worth, this lack of confidence, and worst of all, there was this voice that developed in my head where any time that I would want to go to say or do anything, this voice would say, "Are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure you want to say that? What are other people going to think? What are they going to say? How are they going to react?" And so I just stopped sharing. Now, I'm in grade 11 and I'm completely depressed, and I feel like I'm so ashamed for feeling the way that I'm feeling that I can't share it with anybody. I can't tell my parents what's going on because from a young age, they tried to make me fit within a box that I never felt like was really me. So I felt like they never really understood me from the get-go. And so the challenge with that was that this depression just kept building and kept building. And finally, I couldn't speak to anybody. I couldn't share it with my parents. I couldn't share it with my siblings. I couldn't share it with my friends, the few friends that I did have. I tried and tested it out with them at school, but then they would just use it against me, and they would bully me even more. And so the only living creature that I actually could communicate to, was as corny as this sounds, was my family dog. Now, how many of you, show of hands, have ever had a dog before, or have a dog right now? So a lot of you, I can't really see you because this light is really blaring in my eyes, but I saw a few hands go up. Definitely there's some of you that can relate to me when I say that the beautiful thing about a dog is that no matter what you say or do to them, they're most likely going to respond with unconditional love and understanding. So here I am in grade 11 throwing all my anger and frustration and sadness at my little toy poodle named Brandy. And I swear to you, it was the look that I saw in his eyes every single time as he nestled his nose up on my leg was like, "I get you." I swear that's what he was saying. And then, of course, followed with the "I get you" was this big lick to my face. And now, honestly, if that's not the perfect formula for friendship, then what is, right? We're all longing for those understanding eyes and that big lick to the face, right? Come on. Is it just me? You all know you want it anyway. So Brandy gets me through grade 11. And I get into grade 12, and there's this light at the end of the tunnel. And the light at the end of the tunnel is this belief system that I was taught from a young age, which is that if I can get good grades, then I can get into university. If I can get into university, then I can get a good degree. When I get a good degree, then I can get a good job. Then, of course, once I get a job, then I can make lots of money. Once I make lots of money, I can buy all the things that I think are going to actually make me happy. And then once I get all those things, I'll settle down, I'll find a partner, I'll get married, I'll have some kids, I'll raise my kids, I'll watch my kids grow up, grow old, move out of my house, go off to school, retire, and then be happy. Sound familiar to anybody? Well, this is the story that was so profoundly going through my mind at the age of 17, and one of the scariest things that I've seen working with youth over the past few years is that this story is actually more prominent in 9, 10, and 11-year-olds. I have kids coming up to me saying, Michael, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm so scared. It's a whole other topic. So I'm 17 and I don't know any way to get myself out of this, and the only thing I know how to do is work hard. So I work my butt off trying to get these amazing grades, and I get them, but now they come at a cost of my physical health. And I actually develop a stomach sickness from all the stress and anxiety and pressure that I'm putting on myself to have to get these grades. So now not only am I mentally and emotionally in a very unstable place, but physically, I feel sick to my stomach almost all the time. But I didn't know how to get myself out of this. I wasn't taught any tools or strategies. The only thing that I was taught was work hard and you'll get ahead. So I worked harder and harder and harder, and I got sicker. But I got into university, and I got that acceptance, and it was like, maybe this is my fresh start. Maybe finally I can leave behind all these problems that I was experiencing up to this point. At this point, I honestly felt like I was a victim. I was a victim to my circumstances. I was a victim to the small town that I grew up in. I was a victim to my parents. I was a victim to the people at my school that bullied me. I was a victim to society as a whole. I refused to take any responsibility that I was actually somehow creating some of these challenges that I was experiencing. But I didn't know it at the time, so I went off to university, and my first year was like this coming out party. For the first time in my life, nobody knew who I was. So I got a chance to try on this whole different side of myself. I realized that I was funny. I realized that I was social. I made friends from all these different cultures and different cities, and I had so much fun, and I partied my face off. And the only catch was, of course, I forgot to study. So I'm in first year, I forget to study, I get really poor grades, and then that belief system starts to surface again. And that voice starts saying, Michael, if you don't get good grades, you're not going to get into university, you're not going to get the degree, you're not going to get the job, you're not going to get the money. You know the rest. And so I actually start feeling guilty for having fun. First time in my life, I'm 18, and I actually felt like I was having fun, and I start to feel guilty. And I go into my second year, and I put an enormous amount of pressure on myself to have to get those grades. I work harder than anybody. I'm the guy you would come up to before the test, ask how to answer that question, and I would give you the perfect answer. But I get into the test, I see a question I don't know, and I freak out. I start calculating on my calculator how many marks that one question is worth and how it's going to affect my overall GPA. And then in my mind, this story's going crazy. Like, if I don't get this GPA, I'm not going to get this degree, I'm not going to get the job, my life is over, my parents are going to disown me, I'm not going to make any money. And I freak out and I have a panic attack. Not to mention, I'm running to the toilet 5 minutes before every single exam, presentation, even basketball game, anything that had any significance on it. I was making myself ill from the pressure and the stress and the anxiety to have to get those results. Now, not only was I not getting those results, working harder than anybody else, the stomach sickness gets worse and worse and worse. The depression comes back because at this point my self-esteem is completely attached to having to get those grades. And I have a complete breakdown. I'm 19 years old in my first semester, second year university, and I have a complete breakdown. And I have no idea how to get myself out of it. Now, this is where the story takes a pretty miraculous turn. My help showed up in one of the most unlikely of sources that I could have ever imagined. My father. Now, here's a man growing up, was this type A workaholic, was focused on money, power, profit, success, all external forms of validation. Spent 30 years running the family steel business. Got everything that he set himself out to achieve by the age of 50. But of course, the one thing that was missing, which is obviously the most important, is happiness. And he started to actually question everything that he lived for. Everything that he worked so hard to achieve. started himself on this radical journey of self-discovery and personal development, hired a life coach, read all these self-help books, and within a year had completely turned his life around. And not only did he turn his life around, he decided to become a life coach so that he could help other people step into that as well. And here I am. I'm 19 years old in my absolute rock bottom, and I see my dad show up as a completely different man. And not only that, but a completely different father. And it was his inspired action that got me to follow suit. And I said, if he can do it at 50, I got to be able to do this at 19. And I signed up, I put aside our personal differences, and I signed up and I became his first student. And he got a chance to learn how to be a life coach, and I got a chance to learn how to live a completely different life. And within 6 months of coaching with my dad, the depression, the stomach sickness, everything that I was feeling was completely gone. And for the first time in my life, I experienced sustained moments of happiness. I'm talking about real happiness. I'm not talking about the happiness when you get a good grade, or you get a promotion, or when someone laughs at your joke, or when you ask the girl or guy out and they say yes. I'm not talking about that kind of happiness, because unfortunately the reality is that doesn't really last. Maybe a couple days, maybe a week if we're lucky. I'm talking about real happiness. Now I stand before you 8 years after the point that I decided to make a different turn in my life. And I signed up to become my dad's first student. And not only did I get a chance to transform my life, but we transformed our relationship. And as of October in the fall of 2012, we published our first book together. And it's called Empowered Youth, A Father and Son's Journey to Conscious Living. And in that book, we share our story from two perspectives, but we also share our tools and our strategies to live a happier, healthier, more positive life. And there's one thing that I want to leave you at this talk that I think is the most important thing that we all need to understand, is that happiness is an inside job. Happiness is not something that's going to come from a paycheck. Happiness is not going to come from a new title or a promotion. Happiness is not going to come from a piece of paper that you get when you graduate college or university. Happiness is not going to come when everybody outside of your life validates you. It will not last. You will always be striving and never arriving. True happiness is a state of being. True happiness comes from within. True happiness is created by how you feel about yourself. When you focus on you, and you focus on changing you, and changing your mindset, and changing how you feel about yourself, you not only become happy about you, become happy about life. Success does not create happiness. I'm sorry, it doesn't. Happiness creates success. Focus on creating inner happiness every step of the way, and everything else will come from that. And I'm going to leave you by one quote, my favorite quote of all. Michael Jackson said it best. I'm starting with the man in the mirror, or woman, and I'm asking him or her to change their way. I challenge each and every one of you in this audience today to take away from this conference, go away, take a look at your lives, and ask yourself, if you want something to change outside of yourself, if you're not happy with your external circumstances or environment, don't look to change anything outside of yourself. Take a look at yourself in the mirror and say, am I showing up in the way that I really want to be showing up? Am I feeling the way that I want to feel about myself? If you make that change within yourself, the world around you will change. And that is how we change this world. Thank you very much.
You will take turns tonight, not